Okay, great. So Hebrews 7, the reason why I'm not doing verse by verse for the first 10 verses is because we basically did when we were doing Genesis chapter 14. And if you don't remember, Genesis 14 is about, Abraham fighting the four kings, and he defeats the four kings just with 318 people. And after he defeats them, when he's coming back, King Sodom comes to meet him. But before King Sodom meets him, he gives a tenth of all his, portion to Melchizedek, who, I don't know, from thin air, he just pops up over there. And, Melchizedek is there waiting for him with bread and wine. And he gives his tithe to him, and then Melchizedek blesses him. And then he goes to King of Sodom, and King of Sodom says, you can keep the goods, just give me my people back. But Abraham says, no, I swear I will not do that, right? And, he just comes back home. So that's the story. So just want to quickly touch base from what we have learned from Genesis 14 and from Hebrews 7, 1 to 10. First is that Melchizedek, he is a king and a high priest, right? He's both. He's not only a king, but he's also a high priest. And his name means king of righteousness and king of peace. Are you guys with me?
Yeah.
Okay. So what's the first point? He is king and he is also a high priest. What's the second point? He is the king of righteousness and king of peace, right? Okay. Verse 3 says that, he does not have a genealogy. How do you say that? Genealogy. He does not have a genealogy. Melchizedek does not have a genealogy. He just popped up from thin air. Literally popped up. He does not have a mother. He does not have a father. And he is a priest forever. Okay. So what does that mean that he does not have a genealogy? What that means is he is like Christ. Okay. John 1:1 says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Okay. It is only Jesus and God and parts of Trinity, those who don't have a genealogy. They are the beginning. I am the Alpha and the Omega. They are the beginning and the end, right? So this fellow also does not have a genealogy, right? He's a perfect typology of who Christ is. Okay. Then what we understand from verse 7 is that he is superior to Abraham. That's why Abraham received his blessing, right? Abraham very humbly, he received the blessing from Melchizedek, but he was very adamant about not being blessed by King Sodom, because he knew that Melchizedek was superior. So when the author, when he's making these arguments, what he's basically saying is, okay, Simi is here. When the author is making this argument, what he basically is saying that Melchizedek is a priest that is superior to the priesthood of Aaron. Okay, that's the argument that he's making. So if you understand Hebrews, and if you've been with us in the study of Hebrews, what we are seeing is the author of Hebrews is going back to the Old Testament, taking all of those scriptures, and he is revealing how Christ is superior than everything that is there in the Old Testament, right? So he begins by saying that Christ is superior than angels. Then he talks about how Christ is superior than Moses. Then he talks about how Christ is superior than prophets and all of that, right? Now he's saying that Christ is superior than the priesthood that was there in the Old Covenant. Okay. And how is he superior? His argument is Christ is in the order of Melchizedek, and Melchizedek is superior than Abraham and than Levi. How do we know that? Is from verse 7. It says that Abraham accepted, Abraham gave tithe because, he was inferior to Melchizedek. Did you read verse 7? It says, it is beyond dispute that the inferior is blessed by the superior. So when Abraham gave tithe, he was actually being blessed. Okay. When you give tithe, you're being blessed, right? So Abraham, he gave tithe to Melchizedek. Okay. And that's why Melchizedek is considered superior. Now, one thing I want you to read is verse 9 and verse 10. If you come to verse 9 and verse 10, it says, one might even say that Levi himself, who receives tithe, paid tithes through Abraham, for he was still in the loins of his ancestor when Melchizedek met him. Okay, why I particularly want you to focus on this verse before we go to the next passage is it's a very powerful verse if you try to understand this. Okay, because Levi, they were given the responsibility of taking tithe from everybody else, right? From their brothers and sisters. They were the only tribe that was supposed to take tithe, and they did not have any property or any inheritance like that which they received when they when they received the promised land. So they were supposed to live through tithes, right? Now when Levi received tithe, the book of the author of Hebrews is saying that Levi also himself paid tithes to Melchizedek. And how he did that is when Abraham was giving tithe, Levi, the children of Levi were also with him when Abraham was giving tithe. It's a powerful statement. Just imagine, when young people say that whatever I do, it's my life, no, man, it's not your life. Whatever decision that you make is passing on through generation. Any blessing that you receive is automatically passing through generation. Are you guys getting what I'm saying? So it's such a big responsibility that we have, and Abraham understood that, right? And that's why Abraham is so being adamant on the kind of associations that he has. He's like, okay, King Sodom and Gomorrah, when you are in trouble, I'll come and deliver you, I'll help you, but I will not have a covenant with you. Such a powerful statement. Okay, I will not have a covenant with you, right? I want to have a covenant with whom I am yoked. Okay, so when we talk about this, we usually we hear pastors talking about, do not be yoked with non-believers. And when we think about non-believers, we only think about people from other faith. I'm saying not just that, not just people from other faith, people who do not agree to our value system. Be careful if you are making covenant with them. Okay, because there is no way that you will not be influenced. Okay, and Abraham knew that. Abraham is so careful in the kind of covenant that he's making. Are you guys getting what I'm saying? So that's
Yes.
what we learned last week. So we'll go to the next passage and we'll read verse by verse from verse 11. Okay, so verse 11, somebody read verse 11.
Perfection could have been attained through the Levitical priesthood. Why was there still need for another priest to come, one in the order of Melchizedek, not in the order of Aaron?
Okay, so the author is making an argument. If the Levitical priesthood was perfect, right, was enough, then we wouldn't need another priesthood. And this whole argument, right from verse 11 till verse 28, he's basically showing the flaws in the priesthood. Okay, he's showing the flaws in the previous priesthood of Aaron, in the previous priesthood of the Levi. Are you getting what I'm saying? So this is the basic context. He's saying that we need to move from the Levitical priesthood to Melchizedek priesthood only because Levitical priesthood, we could not attain perfection. Okay, we could not attain perfection, and you will see that in this entire passage he uses a similar kind of a language. So this is the basic context of what the author wants to communicate. Okay, so let's read from verse 12. Verse 12, somebody.
For when the priesthood is changed, the law must be changed also.
Now what does it mean? For when there is a change in the priesthood, there is necessarily a change in the law as well. What does that mean? What is priesthood? Come on, guys, what is priesthood?
Being a mediator between man and God.
Okay, being a mediator between man and God, and okay, more.
Um, his duties were of basically offering sacrifices and offering burnt offerings and other uh, offerings from the people
Okay,
to God.
got it. You raise
Okay,
your ever we verse 12. For there, when there's a change in the priesthood, there is necessarily a change in the law as well. Now,
Yeah.
see, you need to understand one thing. What was God's plan from the very beginning? God's plan is that for heaven and earth to be united. Okay?
Mhm.
Heaven is God's, earth is man's, and the place where heaven and earth is united is what God always intended, right? So a Garden of Eden is an atmosphere that was pulled from heaven on earth where, you know, heaven and earth could be united, where God and man could have fellowship, right? Now, we understand that, right? But when priesthood was introduced, the whole idea was for God and man to have fellowship. So where when the in the Garden of Eden we see that heaven and earth uniting. In the priesthood, where do you see heaven and earth uniting?
When Jesus was on the cross.
No, on in the priesthood, in the law, in the
Where the
Moses law.
where the
Yeah,
per-
but
Holy of holy.
The Holy of Holies, yes, exactly. The Holy of Holies is the place where heaven meets earth, right? God meets the representative of man, whom we call the high priest. Okay, so the priesthood represents a system, okay, represents an earthly system, right? So what the author of Hebrews is saying, when there was a change in priesthood, there was a change in the system as well. Okay, it's like you were part of a you earlier you were part of a house, you were part of a management. Now there's a new management in place. Okay,
Okay.
the new management has new rules, okay, new system, new things, right? Something new is happening. So what the author of Hebrews is basically saying is, one, if there was perfection attained in the Levitical priesthood, we wouldn't need the change. Now when the change has happened, we need to understand that the entire system has changed. Entire system. Okay, that's why Jesus says that you cannot pour new wine in old wineskin. You cannot pour a new covenant concept into an old covenant mindset. The entire thing has to change, right? You cannot, you know, an old person, an old creation cannot sustain the new covenant.
Amen.
That's why in the new covenant we are all new,
Amen.
right? So we are born again. It is by being born again that we have entered this new system. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now verse 13. Pardon.
He of whom these things are said belong to a different tribe, and no one from that tribe has ever served at the altar. For it
Okay.
is
Verse 14.
for it is clear that our Lord descended from Judah, and in regard to that tribe, Moses said nothing about priests. And what we have said is even more clear if another priest like Melchizedek appears,
Verse 16.
one who has become a priest not on the basis of regulation as to his ancestry, but on the basis of the power of indestructible life.
Okay, so the author of Hebrews is saying basically that Jesus, who is a priest, does not follow the priesthood of Aaron because, one, he is not a descendant of Aaron. You get what I'm saying? He is not from the tribe of Levi, right? That's one. Second, he says that Jesus did not become a priest bodily because of bodily descent, right? Is that verse 16? He says he did not become because of the bodily descent, but he became because of the power of an indestructible life. Because of the power of resurrection is why he became a high priest. Okay, so do you see my screen? So
Yeah.
Levitical priesthood, the criteria for them to become a priest was for them to be sons of Levi. If you were sons of Levi, you would be a priest. Okay, but for Melchizedek priesthood, Jesus became a high priest not because he was a descendant, okay, because he was not a descendant of Levi. He was a descendant of Judah. He comes from the tribe of Judah, right? And Judah tribe is known for kings, right? So he is not he actually, from the law point of view, from the old covenant point of view, he's not meant to be a priest, but he's from a different system. And the reason why he can become a high priest, the criteria for that is indestructible life, the power of resurrection. So what the author is saying is basically that when Jesus died, he rose again, he became qualified to become your high priest. When he defeated death, he qualified to become your high priest. That's the criteria of Jesus. That's his qualification.
Amen.
See, all the other priesthood, their qualification was, how are you priest? Man, I am son of so-and-so, son of so-and-so. Jesus,
Amen.
no
Amen.
man, he defeated death. That's his qualification.
Amen.
Got it? Okay, let's read ahead, okay? Verse 18. Sorry, from verse 17 onwards.
17.
Yeah.
For it is declared, you are a priest forever in the order of Melchizedek. The former regulation is set aside because it was weak and useless.
Verse 19.
For the law made nothing perfect, and a better hope is introduced by which we draw near to God. And it was not without an oath. Others became priests without any oath, but he became a priest with an oath when God said to him, "The
Gotcha.
law."
So what he's saying is, he's saying, why was the need for them to change from the Levitical priesthood to Melchizedek priesthood? Because Levitical priesthood did not attain perfection, right? What perfection are we talking about? Wasn't the law perfect? The law was perfect in itself, okay? But it could not provide a perfect lifestyle, right? So the law was perfect, but did not empower a sinner to become righteous.
Amen. Yeah.
Right? That's why, that is where it failed. So the law could tell if you are a sinner or you are righteous, and the law was perfect in itself. But the law could not empower a sinner to become righteous. That is where the law failed. That is where the Levitical priesthood failed. It did not attain perfection, right? Now, understand this. Verse 20 says, and it was not without an oath, for those who formerly became priests were made such without an oath. What does this mean is that the Levitical priesthood, they were made priests without an oath. Okay? They were simply made priests because they were sons of Levi. Okay? But how did Jesus become? Read verse 21.
But he became a priest with an oath when God said to him, "The Lord has sworn and will not change his mind. You are a priest forever."
Okay? So who is swearing for Jesus?
God.
God has sworn, right? So the Levitical priesthood, no swearing was there. There was no oath. But here, God is swearing. What does that mean? God is backing up.
Yeah.
Okay? See, you need to understand the main difference between the old covenant and the new covenant is, the old covenant is between God and fallen man.
Amen.
Okay? Between God and fallen man, right? The new covenant is between God and God and man, but man who has attained perfection.
Amen.
Okay.
Okay, that's the difference here, because Jesus is representing us in the new covenant. He is fully God, he's fully man, but he's not just man who is fallen. He is man who is made perfect, who is perfect. Okay, that's the good news. Okay, did you get it?
Yes.
Okay, let's read verse 22.
Because of this oath, Jesus has become the guarantor of a better covenant. Now there have been many of those priests since death.
Okay, Edmund, verse 22. Okay, now in the Levitical priesthood, who was the guarantor?
Jesus.
Are in the Levitical priesthood?
Levitical.
Who was the guarantor? The priests were the guarantor, right? They represented us, and when they would minister with humans, they would represent God, right? So the priests were the guarantor. But in the new covenant, who is the guarantor?
Jesus.
Christ.
Jesus is the guarantor, right? Okay, awesome. Okay. So who gives you your guarantee? You don't. Your guarantee is not given by Aaron's sons. Your guarantee is given by Jesus.
Amen.
Okay, whom God is backing,
Mm-hmm.
who has God's oath, right? Who became a high priest not because he was born in a certain family. He became a high priest. He did it by his power of resurrection. Okay, let's read verse 23.
Now there have been many of those priests since death prevented them from continuing in office. But because Jesus lives forever, he has a permanent priesthood. Therefore, he is able to save completely those who come to God through him because he always lives to intercede for them.
Okay, what is he saying? In the former covenant, there were many priests, right? So once you're born as a son of Levi, you were called to be a priest, right? And when you are called to be a priest, you don't do it for a particular time. Okay, you're called to be a priest throughout till
Life.
you die. Till
Yeah.
you die. So if somebody becomes a high priest, he is supposed to be a high priest till he dies, right? Now that's why, because we are bound by death, in the old covenant there were many priests, right? Why were there many priests? Because priests died, and then there were
Yeah.
new priests that were coming in, right? So
Yeah.
it's like, imagine, okay, I call a call center, and I tell them my problem, okay. After I tell them my problems, while I'm telling them my problem, my call gets disconnected, right? When I call again, I don't usually get the same person. I get a different person, because that's how the system works, right? I get a different person and I tell him the problem again right from the beginning.
Yeah.
Okay. And while I am having this conversation, the call drops again. Then when I call the third time, a different person comes. Do you see the problem here?
Yeah.
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 And that is what the problem is with the Levitical priesthood. There were so many, right? And not one person could maintain as guarantee for their entire lifetime, right? Because
Yeah.
there were so many and they were bound by death because they died. But we have a high priest who does not die, and we only need one high priest. We only need one, right? So all these priests, they were temporary in nature. They served till their lifetime and they were temporary, right? Because after one priest died, the other one came in power. But we have one permanent high priest whose role is not temporary. Okay? Did you get that?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead. 26. Verse 26.
Such a high priest truly meets our need, one who is holy, blameless, pure, set apart from sinners, exalted above the heavens. Unlike the other high priests, he does not need to offer sacrifices day after day, first for his own sins and then for the sins of the people. He sacrificed for their sins once for all when he offered himself. For the law appoints us high priests, men in all their weakness, but the oath which came after the law appointed the Son, who has been made perfect forever.
Okay. What is he saying? He's saying that the Levitical priests, right, they were sinful themselves. So
Yeah.
what did they had to do? They had to sacrifice first for their own sins, right? Our representation is not sinful. Our representation is somebody who is holy, who is innocent, who is unstained, who is separated and exalted above the heavens.
Amen.
Okay. Man, what a good representation we have. He's holy, he's innocent, he's unstained, he's separated from sinners and exalted above the heavens.
Amen. Amen.
That's why the author of Hebrews says we don't need multiple sacrifices, we only need one.
Amen.
That
Amen.
one sacrifice of Jesus on the cross was
Amen.
enough for the entire mankind.
Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Past, present, future, it was enough for the entire mankind, right? Now, what he uses all of this. Let's revise quickly. Okay, if you can see my chart, my differences. He says, what's the criteria of becoming a Levitical priesthood?
Being born of Levi.
Being born
Ancestors.
being
Being
born
a
in the
Levi.
family of Levi, right? What is the criteria of being for Jesus? How did Jesus become the Melchizedek priesthood?
Because of
Because of
Because he had
power of
the
power.
resurrection.
power of
Yes,
resurrection.
power of resurrection, because of the power of resurrection, right? Now, the Levitical priesthood, they became priests without an oath, right?
Yeah.
But Melchizedek priesthood, Jesus became a priest because God swore, God is backing up, right? Now, in the Levitical priesthood, these priests who were sinful, who were struggling themselves, were the guarantee, right?
Yeah.
But our case, Jesus, who is holy, who is innocent, who is unstained, he is our guarantee,
Yeah.
right? In the Levitical priesthood, there were many priests because they would die. But in our new covenant, we have only one priest who remains permanent.
Amen.
Yeah.
Okay? Read verse 28. What does verse 28 say?
For the law appoints us high priests, men, all in all their weakness, but the oath which came after the law appointed the Son, who has been made perfect forever.
So what is he talking about? What is he saying? He's saying that this system of Levitical priesthood was imperfect, right? But Jesus has attained perfection. See, you need to understand one thing. When a high priest represents you and he goes, representing you to God, God does not see you, God sees the high priest.
Yeah.
Okay? Who's representing us? Jesus is representing us. God does not see your imperfection, God sees the perfection of Jesus,
Amen.
Yeah.
right? He's seeing the perfection of Jesus. That's why Melchizedek priesthood is more perfect, is perfect than Levitical priesthood, which was imperfect.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, in the temple, we had the outer courts,
Yes.
right?
Mm.
Then we had. So, what is this? Outer courts,
Okay.
right? What is this?
Holy,
Holy.
holy place,
Holy place. What is this?
holy of
Holies.
holies,
Holy of
Holies. There is something over here which is separating the Holy of Holies with holy place, which is the
big curtain.
curtain. Okay. Now, the outer courts was for everybody. Everybody as in Jews, right? Only Jews. Outside the temple is for everybody. This is Gentiles plus Jews. Gentiles were not supposed to enter the temple courts, right? So this section was only for Jews. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Restrictively though.
Restrictively, okay? And over here is what sacrifices and everything would happen, right? But the holy place was restricted to a certain people. Who were they?
Priest.
Priests,
Priests.
yes.
Priest.
Priests are sons of Levi, right? Great. And the Holy of Holies was restricted to
High
Most
priest.
high.
Most High Priest, yes. And that too, he could not go every time. He could
Once in a
only
year.
go once in a year, right? Right? Now
Yeah.
see what Jesus has done. What Jesus has done, the first thing that he did, because of resurrection and because on the cross, what he did, on the cross, okay? What Jesus did was he did this. He removed the curtain. Okay? And Jesus himself is here. Where is he? Is here. Right? Read come to Hebrews chapter 6 and read verse 19 and 20. Verse 19 and 20. It says, we have this as a sure and steadfast anchor of the soul, a hope that enters into the inner place behind the curtain, where Jesus has gone as a forerunner on our behalf, having become a high priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. Who is Jesus? He's our high priest. And why has he gone behind the curtain? You need to understand this. This is very important. Why is he gone behind the curtain?
To offer the sacrifice.
Okay. Jesus, high priest. But what does verse 20 says? Jesus has gone as a forerunner.
Forerunner.
What does it mean he's gone as a forerunner?
On our behalf.
Okay. What it means as a forerunner is that, hey, I am running the race. I am going there ahead. But seeing me, seeing my example, I'm inviting you. I'm inviting you into the Holy of Holies.
Amen.
Like
Are
a
you,
guide.
hello? What do you say?
Like a guide. Someone.
Like a guide, yes, but also like an example. Like for example,
More like preparing a way.
yeah. So like for example, Mount Everest, right? I think Edmund Hillary, he was the one who climbed Mount Everest for the first time, right? I don't remember. Some British guy,
Yeah.
right? Now, when he climbed Mount Everest, do you know that after he climbed, there were so many who could climb Mount Everest?
Yes.
But before that, for so many years, nobody could climb Mount Everest. They tried and they failed. So Jesus, he not only he made us perfect, not only he went to the Holy of Holies, but he's also inviting us, saying, "Hey guys, I have done this. I have made you perfect. I have given you everything that you need to be where I am." He's inviting you into that place. He is our anchor. Are you guys getting what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So his role as a high priest is not only to intercede for you and to represent God. His role is to represent you as you. He's telling you, hey guys, what it means to be human is not to look at your mother and father. What it means to be human is to see me. See me, I am the perfect human and you are already that because I made you perfect. Look at me. So he's inviting you into the Holy of Holies for this amazing relationship to share with God. He's saying that if I and God the Father could become one, and we had the audacity to say that me and my Father are one, so can you do that.
Amen.
Because I have removed the curtain, I'm inviting you into this journey. Not to the outer courts, not to the holy place, but to the Holy of Holies. So our life, see, earlier, I'll tell you something, I'll show you something. Everything was going like this, right? From the outer courts to the holy place to the Holy of Holies. Everything was flowing like this, right? But now in the new covenant, the kingdom of God is being established, flowing like this. From the Holy of Holies, man,
Amen.
we are possessing the entire earth. All the kingdom of the world will become the kingdom of God.
Amen. Amen. Amen.
Okay? This is why he's become a high priest. This is why he's become a perfect high priest. See, the reason why people could not become perfect is majorly because of their priesthood. Because their priesthood was fallen in nature, right? But we have a priesthood who is perfect, who is blameless, who is holy, who is set apart, who is righteous. Okay? So we are not looking at the fallen sons of Levi. We are looking at Jesus who is perfect. If he is perfect, so are we in this world. That's our calling. Our calling is to enter the Holy of Holies, to live our lives from the Holy of Holies. We are already there. But the author of Hebrews is saying, tell your mind that, remind your mind. Because if Jesus has done it, so can you. He has done it as an anchor. Anchor samajhte ho? Yeah? The anchor of a ship is what, holds the ship so that the ship will not, get drifted away. He's the anchor. You cannot be drifted from the Holy of Holies because Jesus is your anchor.
Amen.
And he's inviting us into the Holy of Holies. He's inviting us into that indestructible life. He's inviting us into that power of resurrection. He's saying, come on guys, do it. You are my body. Do it. flow from here. The author of Hebrews says again in Hebrews 12, he says, look at Jesus. He is the author and perfecter of our faith. So what he's saying is, hey guys, don't build your reference of humanity based on what you see, because that's a fallen reference. Build your reference on what you see in Christ. Christ is the perfect reference of what it means to be human.
Bhaiya, was law imperfect, or did people's conception of law imperfect?
The law was not imperfect, but the law could not empower. That's the problem here.
Okay.
The law
Paul
could
says
not.
that in
Yeah,
Romans.
Paul says that in Romans 8. If you read Romans 8, verse 3, I believe. Yeah, verse 3 and 4, it says, for what the law could not do, the law was meant to do, meant to make us righteous. The law, for what the law could not do, God did by sending his own son. Okay, so the law is good for people who are righteous. The law is not good for sinners. It does not empower. The law just says, this is, this is sin, this is righteousness. That is what the law is meant to do.